Nintendo has created some of the most beloved characters in video game history. However, the company itself has been around way longer than Mario. Any company that was founded back in the 1800s is bound to have a lot of skeletons in their closet. Here's a look at some secrets Nintendo probably doesn't want you to know. Shady start. For most of the 19th century, it was illegal to play card games in Japan due to the associations with gambling. In 1889, shortly after the laws against gaming were eased, Nintendo was founded to make special playing cards called Hanafuda. Soon, Nintendo's Hanafuda cards allegedly became a major staple at illegal gambling parlors run by the Yakuza. You know, those Japanese gangsters with the tattoos that appear in every bad action movie. And that isn't their only shady connection to underground activity. Though the card-making business was lucrative, Nintendo eventually branched out into other business ventures, including owning a love hotel in the 1960s, which charged patrons by the hour for discreet encounters. And not the kind from Final Fantasy, if you know what we mean. Bizarre internet rumors about Nintendo's association with the Yakuza continue to persist to this day, but the company went to great lengths in the 1980s to clean up its image, so information about their infamous love hotels is nearly non-existent. In fact, this is the only known footage of someone trying to use the Nintendo love hotel. Fumbling toward success. Love hotels weren't Nintendo's only weird money-making scheme. Before becoming the darling of the home console market in the 1980s, Nintendo struggled to find their niche, trying out all sorts of bizarre business ventures in hopes of striking it rich. They made vacuum cleaners, instant rice, ran a taxi service, and even had a TV station. They also branched out into the toy aisle, with Game Boy inventor Gunpei Yokoi designing their first big hit, the Ultra Hand, which was successful enough to help Nintendo pay off the debts incurred from all their previous failures. And speaking of the Game Boy, accidental hit.
I am called Game Boy. I am programmed to play games.
When Gunpei Yokoi designed the Game Boy, he specifically wanted it to be as cheap and lowbrow as possible to distinguish it from the console market. Annoyed by the complexity of console games, he envisioned a handheld device that would run simple, old-school games for people who wanted to go back to the basics. In fact, he purposely had it made in black and white to keep it simple, even though they had the technology to produce a color version from the start. However, Nintendo was accidentally saved from itself when Satoru Okada recognized the device's potential and insisted it be fleshed out, turning it into the beloved device gamers know and love today.
All the great games you can get for a Game Boy, you better believe you can spend your whole life playing Game Boy! Game Boy!
The Virtual Boy was doomed. The allegedly migraine-inducing 3D game system Virtual Boy is considered one of Nintendo's biggest, most confusing flops. In the mid-90s, fascination with the capabilities of virtual reality was on the rise, so a company called Reflection Technology started working on a virtual reality system, which wasn't really VR at all, but sort of emulated it through oscillating LED lights that reportedly made many users nauseated or dizzy due to lag. Once Nintendo got a hold of it and started turning it into the Virtual Boy, though, technical problems immediately arose, forcing them to abandon a wearable goggle system for a boring tabletop model. They also were stuck with an outdated power system, bad lag, and consumer worry about the system's effect on your eyes. Coupled with a premature release before project goals had been reached, and you had a mess of a system doomed to fail before it began. Nintendo created their archenemy. The abandonment of the Super Nintendo CD system is one of the most colossal and embarrassing missteps in gaming history. Nintendo had a deal with Sony to help them create a CD-based system that could have been the most impressive video game console on the market. But Nintendo didn't like the financial terms of the deal, so they secretly went behind Sony's back and partnered with Philips CD to make the CDI console. And we all know what happened then. The worst Zelda game ever made.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok!
The result was a massive failure, both creatively and financially. Philips reportedly lost over $1 billion, thanks in part to a stable of terrible games shredded by critics and fans alike. Sony, meanwhile, got understandably ticked off at Nintendo's double dealing and used their work on the abandoned Super Nintendo CD system to create their own console, the PlayStation. Whoops. Nintendo knew Wii straps would break. In 2006, Nintendo released the Wii console with its innovative controller that many users found themselves inadvertently flinging across the room, smashing valuables, and giving family members concussions because of faulty wrist straps. This led to a massive class action lawsuit, which revealed that Nintendo was fully aware of the design flaw before release, but went ahead anyway, presumably because you gotta make money somehow. Nintendo attempted damage control by offering to replace the wrist straps of 3.2 million already purchased controllers, but the lawsuit continued for years, racking up untold legal fees until it was eventually dismissed in 2010. The Nintendo hotline boondoggle. Back before the internet, gamers who were stuck didn't have many options to figure out what to do. Luckily, though, Nintendo Power Magazine had a special pay-per-minute hotline you could call to speak to an expert who would guide you through the game. One problem: the people answering those calls didn't actually know anything about the game. According to former counselor Sean Bloom, all it took to get the job was filling out a test to prove he knew what the whistle does in the original Legend of Zelda. Recently, an authentic in-company counselor guide turned up in a collection in Seattle, and it turned out to be handwritten notes along with, you guessed it, pages from Nintendo Power. So the people you called were simply reading tips from the same magazine the callers already had in their hands.
You'll get to a place where there's this big skull head guy, looks kind of like something from Star Wars.
The upside for Nintendo? The longer it took these so-called experts to answer questions, the more money the calls generated. Nice scam you got there, Nintendo. Thanks for watching. Click the SVG icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.